On the whole, poetry seems to arise from two natural causes. Already as children, human beings have an inherent desire to imitate. We stand out among all creatures as having the greatest power to imitate, enabling us to acquire our earliest education through imitation, and taking a natural delight in imitation. Our own experience proves this. We enjoy looking at realistic images of what is normally most dreadful and repulsive, such as corpses and wild beasts. The reason is that learning gives considerable pleasure not only to philosophers, but also to other people, although they have a smaller share in it. We enjoy seeing images because we learn by contemplating them and try to infer what each one means. For example, that this person is the same kind as that one. If it happens that we have never seen that person or thing, then our pleasure does not come from the image as such, but from the skill displayed in making the image by using color or similar means. Because we have a natural inclination for imitating, as well as for melody and rhythm, poetic meter is obviously derived from rhythm, the most talented people have gradually created poetry out of improvisations since earliest times. Poetry then separated according to the character of the poets. The more serious poets portrayed noble actions of the best people, whereas the inferior ones presented the actions of insignificant people by producing satires, while the better poets initially wrote hymns and eulogies. We do not have any examples of satire before Homer, though many such poets probably existed. Beginning with Homer's Margites, we can find a number of such works. For these satires, the iambic meter was developed. It is still called the iambic meter because it is the kind of verse in which people lampoon one another. In this way, some of the older poets came to write heroic verse, whereas others wrote satire. Just as Homer was the consummate serious poet, because he was the only one who combined excellent poetry with dramatic form, he also was the first one to outline comic form by showing the humorous itself, rather than satirizing an individual. His Margites is to comedy what the Iliad and the Odyssey are to tragedy. When tragedy and comedy emerged, people were naturally attracted to one form or another. Those who had been drawn to malicious satire became comic poets, and those who had been epic poets chose to write tragedy, because tragedy and comedy are greater and more admirable forms of art than epic and satire. To consider whether or not the form of tragedy is now suitably developed, either in itself or in relation to its audience in the theater, would require a separate investigation. Tragedy and comedy first began as improvisation. Tragedy evolved from the improvisations of the leaders of dithyrambs, and comedy from the leaders of phallic songs that continue to be performed in many cities. Tragedy then gradually developed as each part improved, and after changing many times, it achieved its own natural form and stopped growing. Aeschylus was the first one to add a second actor. He also reduced the role of the chorus and prepared the way for dialogue to take center stage. Sophocles added a third actor and scenery. It took some time for tragedy to acquire its greatness and lofty character, because it had to outgrow the original satyr play with its short plots and comical language. The meter changed from trochaic tetrameter, which had been appropriate for satiric plays and dancing, to iambic trimeter, which is more natural and better suited for spoken language. An indication of this is that in everyday conversation we normally use iambic meter, but seldom use hexameters, and when we do, we must abandon the cadence of everyday conversation. As for the number of events and how each one is properly arranged in tragedy, what has already been said should suffice. Explaining each one in detail would be a major task.